that people are arguing as one of the most busted top laners in the meta. What have you got in the tank?
Well, we do have some answers to this Ksante pick. Gwen is always a really good one, but we need to highlight that Ryze has been let open for this first banning phase. Again, with the Syndra, they are both extremely strong in the meta right now, and I'm honestly shook that TT banned out 3 top laners for Zika instead of getting rid of this Ryze that has a 100% pick or ban rate.
Well, they're going to be able to block that one in again. Great, control mage to roam around, get yourself walked around, and they are going to lock in the Yuumi as well. So you can see already kind of just getting a couple of these big team fight orientated carries that can move your team around, that can keep being annoying. You got the single target CC, and of course the Realm Orb coming out from the Ryze, and with the cat on your back, it becomes very, very difficult to kill anyone. And I feel like, honestly, it is a bit of a takeaway as well. You do not want a cat onto Ksante. Ksante is annoying as much as he is to try and kill, but right now TT are saying, look, full engage, we need to get team fights going, and we're going to go with the Wukong, and that Syndra you mentioned earlier going to be locked up as well.
Well, I believe that LNG is just going to take away the Sivir now, because if they don't take the Sivir in this first banning phase, then the ADCs are going to be completely banned out. It's going to be really interesting to see what TT has as a response. I have seen a lot of Kalista into this scaling pair of Yuumi and Zeri, just because they want to have that early aggression paired up with such like a Nautilus, for example. But yep, the Sivir does get it hovered by Scout, and that will most likely be the ADC of LNG. But going to the second ban phase, a lot of things are open. So if we take a look for TT, they, like I said, have the option to hover over that Kalista, the Varus, but maybe LNG could just keep banning ADCs.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it makes sense. You've got your top half now banned in. Honestly, we could see a lot of bans into top lane coming out now from the side of TT. They might just turn around and go, cool, look, we know what AD carry is going to be. It's going to be like, diametrically opposed in terms of who they are targeting. LNG saying we want to give LP and Hong as big of an opportunity as it possibly can. TT saying, look, Hoya, we can ban this guy out. We can get rid of the Camille. Maybe we get rid of more of those big, fighters, I suppose, in that top side. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, both these teams very open booked, if you will, about how they want to play the game.
Yeah, Vi is still currently available up for LNG to grab, which I do enjoy the combo of a Ryze and Vi. They both provide enough initiation, and they also provide a decent amount of damage for the early game. But I'm assuming TT will just ban away this Vi to narrow it down, but we still have champions like the Viego for Tarzan.
See what they want to go for there. The Alistar's kind of cropping up a couple of times now. We're noticing this one is as a little bit of a target ban. It seems to be something that teams are using as maybe a bit of a counter to the Sivir, because he can't really spell shield all of his CC to try and get engaged on. So we'll see what ends up being the last ban from TT. And right now it is going to be, yeah, the vibe on the top side. So targeting Tarzan, saying, look, we're not going to give you that guaranteed engage, not going to give you that easy way into a team fight, because right now they know that they have all the tools available to them.
They do, and I do want to highlight that Tarzan most definitely can be playing a carry in that jungle position. Like the Viego, like the Graves, it's also very well paired with the Ryze, where they can always play towards the side lane. And I want to see a very aggressive top laner coming out of LNG, and they do hover the Renekton, and I really like this pick. You already have the scaling coming out of the Yuumi and Sivir, and this Renekton just provides that early security.
I love this as well, because do not forget, Tarzan is a Nidalee player. Tarzan is someone who can and will just pick Nidalee and go for that kind of very aggressive top side. So we'll wait to see. He even might go for Elise, to be perfectly honest, as well. So we'll see what he ends up going for here. The Elise does mean, if they do lock it in, they would have to get some pretty big moves early, which can only mean a lot of action. And speaking of a lot of action, we got Caitlyn Lux in that bot side. That is a kill lane if I've ever seen it.
Caitlyn Lux as a response to the Sivir Yuumi. I really like this. The Caitlyn outranges the Sivir so much, but this will be the focal point for TT, at least in the early game for Beichuan. But the Zac does get locked in for Tarzan in this instance, which, like I said, once again, these two comps have very different playstyles. TT, they want to do a bot-focused gameplay in the early game because they have so much damage and CC coming out of the Lux, but it really depends on the Lux's performance, to be fair, because I remember back in day 1, we saw Iwandi pick, I believe it was Lola picking the Lux, and he wasn't able to get much done with the Q, so it really depends on Xinliu's performance on her short-range carries, that how will they respond in these teamfights when they get outranged.
We'll have to wait and see no longer, as we are going to jump straight onto the Rift for Game 1 of this best of 3, Thunderthought Gaming versus LNG Esports. As both teams look to try and start their campaign just before the Chinese New Year. I always love the little graphic we get when we're in Suzhou, but we are now straight onto the Rift. No level 1 shenanigans just yet. Both junglers just putting down some nice defensive wards, getting back, getting themselves reset onto the max. They have those sweepers, and we will wait to see as the Gyos come in.
You already hear the chants from the arena, and this is why I love all these live games where we have the audience showing their passion for the teams that we have for tonight.
We'll see where that passion ends up aligning. Obviously, LNG are technically in their home arena. Not technically, they are, as we see what way it ends up working out for them. But obviously, we're going to see a little bit of aggression now on this bot side. Immediately, Hung saying, look, I know how this lane's going to go. Going to take the heal first, not going to go for the prowling projectile. Just recognizing it's not about winning the lane, it's about surviving it.
Most definitely, and when the Yuumi does start east first, LNG does have that extra sustainability up against the poke and the range from TT's bot lane. But looking at where the two junglers started, they started on opposite sides of the map. So Zach did... Oh!
Okay, very aggressive. I mean, I said they didn't want to win the lane, but you just burned 2 summoners off a bot side, and you still have an exhaust. So this is the power of the Yuumi. You've got that extra combat summoner. So yeah, they're kind of still pushing forward while they have a chance.
A lot of action already for the first 2 minutes of the game in this bot lane, but already see the Wukong pathing towards this Caitlyn and Lux and them being the important bits of this composition, but they're getting out-traded.
They're getting out-traded hard right now. Huanfeng, honestly, it's something he's not really used to. We think of Huanfeng, we think of Samiras, we think of things that want to be aggressive and constantly in your face, and he's had to take a little bit of a back seat, but for the moment, you would imagine now with levels kind of getting up, you're getting level 2 and 3s now on that bot side. It's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to be able to try and make anything stick really on either side. Of course, you have the shielding from the Lux and the light bindings as well. So we'll wait to see if anything does end up happening, as Zika putting down some early pressure is expected of the Renekton. And wait to see where they go. And both junglers going for their full clears. So once they've got that full clear going, where do you expect to see the junglers start to join in on this action?
Beichuan straight to bot lane. Tarzan diving for the Renekton is what I'm expecting for the next 2 minutes. But very basic things coming out of the Wukong, very default, sorry. But I'm really interested to see how this Renekton and Zach is going to manage to kill the flashless Ksante, because technically they don't have Ignite, so they have to really just pump out the damage from their spells. Yeah,
very good point, actually. Normally we do see, as you mentioned, the Ignite coming in just to try and give you that extra little bit of kill pressure if you do look for the dive. But they do know that Beichuan is in this bot side. He did clear a ward here in the brush, so they know it's all there. LP, gotta wait, man. You gotta wait. You can't just be throwing out those spell shields willy-nilly, as we can see a little bit of engage. And Zika! Don't go too close to the sun, my friend, and he's in a lot of trouble. Tarzan, though, off to the side. They're going to look to try and fully go on top of this. He doesn't land it, but it flashes in, and that's first blood, exactly like you called, Kitty. Tarzan makes it happen.
Very good play from the red side of this game, but Hoya trading there was quite interesting because you already know that the Zac will be playing towards this Renekton. The Sivir and Yuumi has been abandoned in this bot lane, but interesting enough, they haven't been losing the trades because every time our cameras are in the bot lane, the Caitlyn and Lux are at half health while LNG's bot lane is comfortably CSing, and even like you can see in the graphs, CSing better.
Yeah, I mean, doing well, doing himself a favor in all kind of situations. So right now it seems to be LNG with a little bit more of a foothold in this game. Of course, you can see Scout just trying to get the push off into mid. The Syndra of Ucal TPing back in to make sure that they do not lose anything. But Wave's in a little bit of a precarious spot. You can see that Scout recognizing Ucal is dangerously close to level 6 and does not want to walk up without any real support from his jungler.
We do have level 5 on Scout, and I'm expecting great side lane dives with this Ryze ult in hand, especially when top lane doesn't have that flash available, like we said earlier. But what is Ucal doing here?
I mean, we'll see what he's actually doing. He's going for a big old flank because Zika does not have level 6 and Ucal does. They're going to try and make it work. Doesn't get the knockback. They don't know exactly where he is. Ucal just walks straight up. Zika didn't actually have full vision of that. He just baited out the time and eventually Ucal just said, right, I've got to go.
I'm not sure if that was perfectly played from Zika or if Ucal just completely missed the mark and never got to CC the Renekton. I respect the attempt in the gank. But we do see Ksante coming in mid lane for a potential gank. Yep, A for effort.
Well, it doesn't actually lose anything from it, to be perfectly honest. So it just gets the wave pushed in. And I will say, I do enjoy seeing like players go for those kind of moves.
Oh.
This is Beichuan thinking of something in the bot lane. Not really expecting to see LNG go for a full engage on this bot side. So maybe he's just hovering in case Tarzan was hiding off on the sides.
Unfortunately spotted out by this ward from LNG, but TT really needs to fasten up this tempo for the Caitlyn and Lux. They haven't been able to touch the turret quite so far, but Dragon might be an option here.
Oh, Dragon might not be an option because the junglers are deciding to go for their own fight. Never mind another fight in the bot side. It's a 2v2. The Realm War coming in. The exhaust is good. The flash is not going to make it. They get him away, but there's a heal there for Xinliu. Is he able to survive? No, he cannot because the power has been overloaded. And that's going to be Scout picking up the return kill. But the important thing is that LP died, which means that Caitlyn gets to still farm.
TT finally decide to play an aggressive, or make an aggressive play on the enemy bot lane, but unfortunately this Ryze has his ultimate available and he just taxied the Zac into the play as well. Really good binding from xinliu to start everything off here, up against the wall, but junglers have been doing a little trade in the river so they weren't involved. But they do trade it for one kill. Ryze and Zac just takes the ultimate and finishes everyone off. And with the mid lane having no TP available on the Syndra, this just becomes a 2v4.
Again, you had the extra combat summoners, but just the power of a Caitlyn looks just so good. Xinliu as well, going to be a nuisance onto Scout and saying, you don't get a free reset, and I'm going to hold the wave. So Ucal tips the hat to him. Thank you very much, good sir. Now, LP, you've lost your cat. Your cat privileges have been revoked. We are now joining towards the top side. Congratulations, you're now solo XP on the bot.
We do have the Lux grabbing a Kindle Gem for her items, so I wouldn't be too worried when it comes to damage for LP just quite yet, but Herald does get started here.
Yeah, we're going to go for it. It is very difficult, you can imagine, for LNG to really contest this, although Zika is in the area. They don't have full knowledge of where the Rift Herald's health bar is. I think they're just going to give it up, maybe look for a fight in top side, and let the Sivir just scale up into those 3-4 item monster that we know the Sivir can be. So, good moves from TT. They recognized they had got the mid pressure, and of course, they had got Xinliu moving up a little bit earlier, a little bit more freely than Hung on this Yuumi. But now, Scout
no flash?
He gets flashed. Yeah, no flash. Gets flashed on. Scattered the weak. Doesn't get hit by the light binding, but does get knocked up and taken down by the unleashed power. And all of a sudden, TT starting to move up some gears.
Really nice follow play from Beichuan. Does put the Herald down the second Scout falls, and this mid tower, all the plates are going to go to Ucal, which I really like, because a broken Syndra with all her items, how is Sivir ever going to live? And of course, like we mentioned from earlier, LNG has such a short range comp. Oh, that got cancelled. I think Tarzan wanted to see blood there.
I think he wanted to try and maybe get something underneath the tower there, but Ucal with the fast fingers able to make sure he's not going to be getting caught anytime soon. And not only was it a Herald and mid lane power, plates, it is going to be the Dragon as well. So TT making full use of this powerful early game and just making sure that they're coming out on top.
Beichuan manages to grab 2 objectives on the entire map, which is very interesting. I don't know what Tarzan was doing. Obviously, his mid laner fell down from the flash ultimate from Beichuan, but both of these objectives going to TT just favors them so much because they do want to fasten up the tempo before the Ryze and Sivir gets to their item spikes and gets to that late game.
Yeah, I see Zika trying to see if he can go for something in this top side. Again, very, very difficult to get onto Hoya. And now you're still waiting for level 6s for the supports, but everyone else has got themselves a full palette of spells available to them. Xinliu and Hong try to make the most impact they can around the map. Both teams started moving around. So now that we know, obviously, TT have taken the first few objectives. They've gotten themselves a nice foothold and reaffirmed themselves as in control. What do you want to see from both of these sides now moving closer and closer to that 15-minute mark?
I want to see the Zac and the Ryze being more proactive around this Ksante because once again, he doesn't have a flash. So once you do land the CC onto him, he most definitely can die and you can put the Renekton ahead because Sivir is not getting any attention from LNG and she is going to slowly bleed from this because of how ahead the Syndra is.
Syndra is going to be the big win condition for now. As LNG start to just put people in towards that mid lane. Scout definitely has been the focus of TT in this early stage, putting the new LNG member under some serious pressure. Gore Drinker finished up here for Zika, but you do have the Frostfire Gauntlet as well on the other side. So Hoya's fine in this situation. And again, just kind of reaping the rewards of the fact that they did ban so many top laners in that first stage of the draft that they're kind of saying, look, the Renekton's fine, but if it doesn't explode onto the game, it's not going to have as much relevance, and you got to be, you know, it's about execution then rather than just raw stats.
Most definitely, and especially when Zika doesn't have that flash available for these team fights, how is he going to get his hands onto the Syndra and Caitlyn? The range is so much to deal with for LNG, where Ryze and the Renekton have to look for a flank onto these carries in those later game team fights.
Oh, seeing a bit of engage here, but just trade-off for the moment. Nothing too untoward or nothing to be writing home about as of yet. Gold pretty much dead even, 2 kills apiece. Of course, that Riptile did go to TT. Next one spawning in 2 minutes 20, as is the next Dragon. So LNG only down a Cloud Drake for the moment. Let's wait to see the scaling options available. And honestly, it is, as you mentioned, just a bit of a ticking time bomb with the Sivir, but also the Ryze as Ucal does get himself Scout of the Week to stop Scout from moving forward with him. With Beichuan and Xinliu now all making their way towards that mid lane, it becomes very, very dangerous for Scout to really kind of stick here. And right now, this is all for Scuttle and mid vision.
LP and Hung were thinking of rotating to that mid lane, but I really like what xinliu is doing. He's trying to make things happen on the other side of the map because,
fine.
Perhaps a 4-man dive out of TT here because they do want to get rid of this bot tower so that Caitlyn can rotate to that mid lane.
Yeah, and they've got so much time to take the plates as well. There's just not really a lot you can do here as LP. You've got Tarzan making his way downtown, walking fast, space is passing, he's homebound as you're trying to see a little bit of an engage. Beichuan now going to have to flash over the wall. They get the let's bounce. He hasn't gotten himself away just yet.
Flash.
No flash. You're absolutely correct. And he messed up the decoys, so that's just a quick and easy kill. It ends up being equaled out with the plates, but TT, again, just similar to last split, similar to last season, just small little mistakes that are just making a decent play turn into a meh play.
I wonder where Beichuan's E went to because that was a very livable play from LNG, but it must have been misused and he just, as a result, died because of that. But like I said, TT is trying to get rid of this bot lane plates. They are trying to get the Caitlyn ahead, which from the scoreboard, she's not very strong right now, even with Sivir picking up her Kraken first.
Oh, Dominus pops. Wanted to try and maybe get Hoya underneath the turret, but not really going to be able to make it work. And whoa! Hello, everybody. We're going to flash forward here from Zika, but he's trying to just stay alive while the Ryze tries to put down some damage. He's not really going to be able to turn that one around fully, but he just traded back. Both
Scout
top laners getting themselves killed by the enemy mid laners. Scout moving forward. He really wants to get that rune prison. The flash scatter means Ucal stays alive for now. I say for now because here comes Tarzan. He knows exactly where they are. He's going to go for it. They're going to jump straight on top of her face. Nowhere for you to go. Shut down. And Tarzan still remains the heart and soul of LNG.
This Tarzan, this Zac is going to be an absolute menace in these team fights. With a Yuumi as well, if you don't start building some heal cut on the carries or even the Lux, he's going to be healing so much with the Radiant Virtue available and the Yuumi attached to him. I'm going to see him being an absolute healing monster. But let's take a look at this top lane play. A really good engage coming out of Renekton because we do see that the Syndra is coming to this top lane, rotating to this top lane. He tries to do as much damage as he can before he falls down, but Scout manages to clean up. He does try and go for Ucal. Oh, more fighting?
More fighting. Scout feeling very confident right now, saying, look, I know you can't kill me just yet. You don't have a flash. I do. And it's very difficult for you to really lock me down unless you have someone else. He also did know that the dragon was taken by TT, so relatively safe in knowledge that the enemy team wasn't really in the wings. But that's still second dragon now as we go on to a Hex Rift. Scout now and Hoya looking for a little bit of a 1v1. We are going to see the ultimate used there by Hoya to try and get himself in. And that means Scout has to flash himself out.
Both mid laners now don't have the flash available, and I want to see some action soon coming out of TT because this Caitlyn and Lux haven't been too active on the map, and even in the early game, they only managed to grab 1 kill and 2 assists from the first 15 minutes of the game. But look at the items available for LNG. They have been able to scale into the early game so relatively well that I'm getting concerned.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a fight now when we get towards those team fights, like you mentioned, and it's just going to be a very interesting setup here for TT if they really want to try and make this game theirs. But falling down by about 1,000 gold. Zika, yes, he hasn't received all the resources. It's actually been Tarzan who's already got his Radiant Virtue, which makes him so tanky jumping into those backside. That extra little bit of HP you get when you land that ability to be right on top of people is just insane. So really not liking where TT have been right now. And like you said, they just got to be a little bit more proactive. They got to try and make things work, because right now Huanfeng with this Caitlyn hasn't really been a factor at all. And going with the Gale Force, he's going for full kind of assassination. Against the Krakasei, it's just not going to be the same. And now Xinliu.
Oh, Tarzan.
Oh, Xinliu does survive, but Ucal might not be so lucky. They're going to drop down the Rift Tower to try and take away the tower before everything else can happen. Scout. Gachi Zika getting caught out a little bit. The Unleashed Power does get used, as does the Light Singularity. Trying to see if they can bring him down. They're going to jump straight on top of him. They're trying to kill him off, but the Goredrinker keeps him healthy. The Realm Warp gets everybody except for Tarzan out, but he's got himself Cell Division. He's passiving back up. They want to try and kill these Bloblists. They've got the TP to keep him alive. Hoya in the front line. Tarzan shut down by the Ksante. Everybody
Where did
just
Zika TP to?
Zika TP to the
I'm
Bloblist.
not sure if my eyes deceive me, but I think Zika E'd out and the TP back into the fight where the fight was already finished. I need to see the replay for that to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But a really good outcome for TT. They are fastening up the tempo a lot more, and that's exactly what I see. But yeah, these teamfights is so dependent on Ucal because they need to stop Tarzan from jumping in with the Yuumi. Let's take another look at this replay. So they start diving on Ucal, which Zika managed to just drop to such low HP from the Ksante and Syndra. But look, I'm just waiting until the moment Zika TP's back in.
I think he TPs onto the Zac Bloblet to make sure that the Tarzan does not die. I'm 99% sure that's what he does. Because he knows that Tarzan's going to die, and they try to save this play so much. So here it goes.
Wait, look at Zika.
He's making sure that Tarzan does not die.
He still died, but he still died.
Yeah, he still dies.
I'm
not saying it's a good play. I'm just saying I can understand it.
Yeah, for sure. But that was a really messy team fight coming out of LNG, and Ryze literally ulted everyone out of the team fight, and some people still managed to creep their way back in, and Zac managed to fall down. Not very great, but at least TT is trying to do something now.
As you said, they got a bit more proactive. They moved down towards that map, and with a minute left until the next dragon spawns, we're going to actually have to be a little bit more careful about where TT or LNG put themselves, I should say, because don't forget, TT have the 2 dragons early. They're the ones stacking up the soul point. They're the ones that are looking to make this a very early soul game, and with Hoya getting up and getting into people's faces, becoming very much an unkillable monster, it is going to be a lot harder for them to just kind of make this fight happen. I will say, however, in that last fight, you didn't have a lot of flashes. Now it's going to go straight for the fight. They're going to try and go maybe onto Hoya, burn him down. LP trying to put down the damage and make sure he cannot get away. He gets himself over the wall. Not quite, though.
Hoya.
And Hoya's still going, but Hoya does fall. Now they're going to try and maybe burn down Tarzan, but he's so tanky. With the Yuumi on his back, there's just not really a lot you can do. And now you are 5v4, but LNG... Oh, I thought they were maybe thinking about rushing towards that Baron, which was spawning in 10 seconds. But no, they know they need to take the dragon. They know they need to stop this dragon stacking from the side of TT.
In the end, LNG do pick up the 3rd dragon into their pockets, allowing them to deny soul points from TT. But Hoya does get a little bit lost in that dragon pit because everyone managed to get over the wall but him. And unfortunately, with all the damage coming out of LNG, he falls down in the very end. I do want to take a look at the item builds. We do have the Oblivion Orb available on the Lux now. However, she hasn't completed her first mythic yet, so she is extremely behind. But TT and Ucal and Huanfeng are starting to slowly pick up their second item, and like I said, they are the main carries of TT, and how is Zika going to really deal with these two carries when he has the flash available, which he does now?
Oh, well, we're going to see it right now. Actually, never mind. It's going to be Scout looking for this one here. Zika and Scout looking to try and catch out Ucal, who does have flash, but not really many places to go. Beichuan thinking about it like, oh, I'm sorry, buddy. I got to back away. I can't do much here for you. And they are going to be able to pick up another free kill off in that side lane. And again, TT, this is the problem we had with you last split. This is the things I wanted to see change. Small little differences that can make you from a good team to a great team. And now the Baron has been started. The Baron has been set as TT know they have to go for a fight. So lots of team fighting potential. Flash there
nice
from
cancel.
Xinliu keeps him alive. They get the cancel out. Beichuan gets the decoy off to make sure he doesn't go down. But again, more and more ultimates being used. They get the Cyclone out, and there's the Realm up to put them onto the backside. Hoya gets in. They're going to let's bounce on top of everybody. They're trying to kill off this AD carry and support duo. Another ultimate comes out on the side of Yuumi. They drag back Hoya, but again, he's very, very tanky. But is he tanky enough? The answer is no. Tower in mid is going down, and we've gone from second gear to fifth for LNG.
With Ucal being unavailable for that team fight by being caught early in that top lane, with Huanfeng having his Gale Force and not a Kraken Slayer, this Zac is literally unkillable when the Yuumi is giving him the E. But Zika in a bit of trouble.
He should be fine, question mark. Has got a flash available to him. Would definitely love to not have to use it right now, but Beichuan goes a little bit too far forward, has to use the blast cone to get himself back out to safety. But yeah, this has been all about that mid-jungle synergy. We talked about how in LNG last year it was all Doomby and Tarzan, and now it's Doomby and Scout and Tarzan.
Yeah, Ucal is unavailable. Really good cancel coming out of Beichuan here for this Zac E. But without this Syndra in this teamfight, Huanfeng doesn't do enough damage to deal with the front line. We can see once again a really nice flank from Ryze's ultimate, and this is once the Caitlyn has been approached by the front line of LNG, she can't DPS, and Tank is just doing the damage and the engage and the initiation where Ksante slowly falls down as well.
Does it all. That's what Tarzan is for this team. 3-1-3 alongside Scout, who is 4-1-2, and Scout is barreling towards 3 items right now. You do have a Void Staff being picked up here by Ucal, and of course the Force of Nature for Hoya does keep him alive, but we talked about it earlier today, and we got to bring ourselves back to it. We got to look at LP, because he's got himself the Phantom Dancer now alongside that Kraken Slayer, building towards the Infinity Edge. Beichuan clearing out the vision here with xinliu and Ucal, but LNG, they're sitting pretty. They're only 2,000 gold ahead, but it does feel like these fights are just constantly going more and more in their favor.
LNG definitely starting to pick up their items, already on the 2 items for both Ryze and Sivir, but because TT weren't able to manage a lot of early game team fights, Huanfeng is really suffering from this. He even builds the RFC. I'm not too sure why he built the RFC. You're already versing such a low range team comp coming out of LNG, where I think this RFC is just going to even will play more into the low damage build to not be able to kill the Zac or Renekton.
Yeah, like your Gale Force and RFC is just not really gonna cut through, and it kind of it speaks volumes to Tarzan's build as well. He's gone for the Spirit Visage because he recognizes, look, there's no one who can really burst me out. There's no, except for the Syndra, so if I just itemize for her, I should be fine. And that's where this game gets a little bit harder, as we can see now LNG right on the cusp of the vision. Starting off this Baron, they will see that little move there from the Baron, as Scout did move towards the vision, and they know that this is going to be going on. They have to know what's going on, Kitty.
The Luxel does get used for some little vision, but it does force LNG off that Baron. Now Scout has his Roa and Saras completed with the stopwatch in hand. If Ucal dies first once again in these teamfights, I don't think Caitlyn will have the damage to finish everyone off, especially with the Ryze and his build. He has so much health and regeneration. It's looking so hard for TT right now.
It's looking very difficult, but they do have the rotation out because they do recognize that Scout is top side, so no real threat of him joining in on this one, but it's a tier 1 for a tier 2, but it is going to be sole point now for the side of TT. Do LNG rush for this Baron? They're going to try and definitely burn out all of this vision.
The wards.
They got the wards out and they're starting it up. Remember, you still have some decent damage here with the Renekton, so this is going to be a fairly easy one to kind of take out. They are going to put Zika in the back of the pit to see if they can maybe catch somebody out. There's going to be another ultimate, the last spark, just pushing out that vision. They're still on top of it, but you can see LNG, they don't want the fight. They don't want the Baron. They want to try and get on top of Scout. TT looking to try and catch him out. They get the lifeline out of him from the Athenes. Ucal almost getting on top with Hoya there. Scatter week was good. Zika on the backside, but just can't do anything. This Renekton has hit his threshold and is just not that relevant. TT called the bluff and LNG walk away with their tails between their legs.
Really nice engage onto Scout here. Unfortunately, he had the Seraph Shield available and he had still a Zhonya's in hand. So burning all the spells onto this Ryze and not getting anything was looking really bad for TT. But luckily, the Zika does a flash in. And because there's no follow-up damage from the Sivir, I believe she was too far away to DPS, being from just coming from Dragon. So Zika does manage to fall. But let's take another look. So Beichuan decides to pull the trigger and just engage onto Scout. I believe even the Lux manages to follow up with a really nice spell here as well. But look at where Sivir is. She's completely zoned out of the fight, where Zika flashes in onto the carries, but there's just no damage coming out of LNG, where he gets traded for a 1 for 0.
And it's going to be a bit of a slowdown on the pace right now between these two teams. Still a 2,000 gold lead just underneath it here for LNG as they get themselves back onto the map. The Zhonya's Hourglass finished up here for Scout, so even more survivability if he didn't. You know, it's so tanky, just so much HP and armor, and yet he will still blow up most of your carries if you're not careful. We are moving towards a third item here for LP. You can see him there kind of just trying his hardest to get as much gold into his pocket as he can. Zika, you got the Death's Dance, but you do not want to dance with these guys right now. You are just not feeling super strong, and they all back away. They don't know exactly where Zika is, and they think they might have to try and cover mid.
Now Zika not having the flash available for these teamfights, and him being a Renekton in the late game up against a Ksante, your value compared to this Ksante is so much lower because you're not as tanky as him, and you don't have the flash to really get onto those carries like Ksante's ultimate. So I'm really wondering how LNG is going to look for these angles. With Scout having his ult available, they should really look to flank in these teamfights.
And again, longer this game goes on, the more you will scale into it. Of course, the Sivir and the Ryze will still be doing. But like you said, there's no point in having a Sivir if she's not in a position to put out that DPS. Very low range, like you mentioned earlier. So TT will have options to be able to kind of keep LNG at arm's length. And if they can do that, that's where TT will start to find their opportunities. That's where TT will start to make this game a little bit more shaky, shall we say, for LNG. And this is, again, a team that made it all the way to the regional finals last split. They got so close to going to the World Championships as the number 4 seed from the LPL and just could not quite make it in. So LNG, you need to be looking a little bit more as Beichuan doesn't have to burn any of his flashes, and this is the power of the Zac. He's got such long range with that elastic slingshot. You just got to be careful. He could be coming from any angle.
3 items available for both the Sivir and the Ryze now. We are approaching 29 minutes into the game. And these two champions are scaling to their dream by reaching this. Because Caitlyn and Lux, once again, weren't able to manage to get that lead that they hoped for. But the trade-off was Renekton being 0-2 right now.
Yeah, 0-2. I will say is Hoya is 1-4, so you know, in perspective, it's not as bad. But I do agree with you. This Renekton, I mean, I can't really. I feel bad for Zika because it feels like he is a carry player and he was almost forced onto this Renekton purely because it was everything else was banned. Maybe could have went with the Camille. Different, you know, matchups, different feelings on it as well. So we'll see what they're able to kind of go for. Now the Sivir, with the Lord Dominic's regard, is going to be chunking through these waves, really burning as much as they can. And that's why Ksante, Hoya picking up the Randu and Zoman. I actually really like this pickup from him because if he can just mitigate all that damage with the AoE, really make a nuisance of himself on that backside, it can spell disaster for LNG. But with 45 seconds to go, until that dragon spawns, Zika's getting engaged upon, but it's just a little bit of poke to make sure they know that he knows that they know.
LNG is already setting up all the vision for this bot side and soul point. And really good job, honestly, because they do not want TT grabbing this Hextech soul. It's going to be so hard to manage once the Caitlyn and Syndra have that extra slow onto their abilities, being such a short range themselves. But Zika will have his flash available for this team fight, and I just want to see him utilize the Ryze ult and go in with Tarzan.
6 seconds left, and that was a very late reset from Huanfeng, and they know they reset from Huanfeng, so they know that right now this is a 5v4, so Huanfeng using those Hex Gates, they're going to jump onto Scout, who might have to try and get himself away from this one. Beichuan so low as Tarzan gets cancelled out of the Elastic Slingshot, but again, you're losing the Cyclone here. TT just a little bit late on the rotation. They'll have to wait probably another 5 minutes before this sold.
I guess the Soul Dragon does go to LNG here, but something else that I'm sussing out is Huanfeng's build. So he decides to opt into the... Well, he had a BF Sword and Vampire Scepter, I believe. I was really worried that it was going to turn into a Bloodthirst. So maybe someone picked up and he has opted into the IE, which has helped him a lot in terms of the damage department. But yeah, I guess now that Caitlyn has finally picked up her third item, she will be doing so much damage up against the Sivir and Ryze, where if she really utilizes this range advantage compared to these two champions, then TT is looking to have a very good position in these team fights.
Yeah, I think the big thing I'm looking at right now is Huanfeng. He has to make sure his positioning, like you mentioned, yes, he can put out the damage, but if he's not positioned for it, it's definitely not going to be the best for him. Scout going toe-to-toe with Hoya there. It's pretty much just going to be a wet noodle fight down in the bot side. Neither of these guys really having the capacity, you would imagine, to kill off the other. And now Baron has been started, but it's LNG maybe just testing the waters, seeing if they could get something going for them. And now they're going to go straight away onto it. They don't see that the vision is there. They know that Ksante was bot side, but he has got a TP. Beichuan's on a ward. They know the Wukong's not here. They know TT aren't ready.
Will they sneak it?
They're going to try and look for it. LP just going to throw in a Boomerang Blade. They've got a TT. They did so well at keeping vision, keeping themselves on top of all these objectives, but just again and again, they drop the ball and then look around as if it's someone else's fault that they're not playing the game.
No, TT's worst nightmare has come true, and they gave away the Baron to LNG, and for a scaling comp, this Baron is going to do so much for LNG, and I'm getting really worried because Scal is just going to go onto the side lane with this Baron buff, and you have to have at least 1 or 2 people to face off up against him because he is full defensive and all health.
Yeah, all health, and this is it. This is the ward. This is it. They actually drop down onto a trap and immediately drop down the ward. That is what gave it all away. That is what gave LNG the opportunity to take away the Baron, and now you've got yourself a low-range comp, which normally is pretty bad at sieging, but with this Baron buff, it's going to be a lot easier.
Oh my god, it's ultimate.
I mean, just for a little bit of poke, just to try and see if something could happen, but now you're walking forward. You can't even walk into your own jungle, kitty. It's a dangerous place to be.
Honestly, if I was Zika there, I would just flash onto the Caitlyn and get it over and done with. How dare you flash, how dare you ult right in front of me, but playing it safe because his flash is very valuable for these team fights.
Well, Hoya's life is very valuable for TT if they want to try and win those team fights. So he needs to back himself away, but now he's no longer available. They've got the push in the mid lane. They've got push in bot. So again and again, we are seeing LNG just pick apart TT. TT just not able to make a cohesive decision about what they want to do. They just feel like they're just a bit all over the place.
Caitlyn's still sitting on that Vamp Scepter. I don't see... I mean, I guess you do have the Sivir able to use that W on the minion wave and you can have that extra bit of sustain. But I really want to see him pick up his Lord Dominix because you're up against Zac and Renekton. Look how much your ultimate is doing to this Renekton. Literally nothing, and I want to see just a Lord Doms coming out of her ASAP. I would honestly even sell it because of how important it is for the Caitlyn to toss out damage in these team fights. I want to see the Syndra to be playing more defensive with her E because she's realistically the only one stopping the Zac from engaging.
I mean, I feel like right now it's Huanfeng just picking on Zika right now, being like, I'm gonna ult you. It's like, why? It's like, I don't know. I've decided. You are now my ult target for all eternity. As we can see now, Xinliu, he might be in a hell of a lot of trouble. Now Kiss, now die. Huan picks up that kill. They are gonna try and get the Scatter of the Week down, and the Sivir is dead. LP getting caught out on the backside of this. TP comes in from Zika, but not really gonna be able to turn into much else. So yes, you do lose your support, but you gained an AD carry, and that was just really poor positioning from LP.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen this Yuumi on the Sivir in the first place. So, rip, you lost the cat to the Zac, but unfortunate positioning coming out of LP. Still has the flash available though, and Dragon is coming up in 30 seconds. We do have the Hextech gates available, so Sivir can sneak her way back in. And like I said, the flash is still available, so maybe it's not too bad for the side of LNG.
Maybe not, but you definitely would have felt like LNG with that support taken. They maybe could have went for something else if they had the Sivir again. Very difficult to kind of push forward without those light bindings to kind of stop the ensuing Tarzan and Zika. But wait and see. 12 seconds till the next dragon spawns. If LNG can get themselves onto Soul Point, that's a pretty big moment. Zika gonna find Hoya and maybe just try and look for a bit of a fight here. He's gonna have to try and just dash himself over the wall, but it is TT in position because, again, they'll burn this down. We're into the late game. They have to go for a fight. Here we go. They're going to try and get on top of absolutely everyone. The Realm Opener is there. All the AoE is hitting. Caitlyn is dead. And Scout and LP are trying to put out the damage. LP comes back in just to die. But a double kill coming in there for Zika as he finally comes to life on this Renekton pick. The Zac jumping on top of Hoya, who says, I'm sorry, Xinliu, but I shall salute you in the base. And the base is the next target for LNG.
TP coming out of Scout for this mid lane. They can most likely end this game if Ksante can... he doesn't have the wave clear. I think this game is technically over for the side of TT. But what can Caitlyn do? She had the flash available. She didn't use the Gale Force, unfortunately, because the Zac was just so potent in these team fights where Ucal's E, if he doesn't get rid of these two tanks from Caitlyn's face, she doesn't even have time to use Gale Force.
They're ignoring him. They're ignoring him. Ksante, we don't care.
Yep.
We don't give a damn who you are. Tarzan has got himself the cell division, so he does not give two shakes of anything. As now the rest of the team comes in, LNG looking to try and end it, and they will. It was a slow burner. It definitely wasn't clean, but LNG taking the best foot forward and go 1-0 up in this series.
Very solid gameplay coming out of LNG. Honestly, even if LP he is a rookie coming onto the roster for 2023 from the LNG Academy team. He wasn't the weak point compared to the rest of the team, right? Because even though LP was left on an island and Yuumi was just making plays on the other side of the map, this Caitlyn and Lux counterpick to the Sivir and Yuumi weren't very potent, and they weren't able to get that lead from the early game, and just everything fell loose because Ucal, he got caught twice in the side lane, and he wasn't able to have enough gold in his pockets to really do a lot of damage up until that last dragon fight.
Yeah, it did really feel like it, in a weird sense. This game had nothing to do with the AD carries. Both of them dying so quickly in fights, not really having any relevance. It was all about the solo lanes, even right at the end. Yes, Zika had a pretty tough time on this Renekton. Didn't get the massive amounts of early resources we tend to see, but still being a menace, still getting on top of Syndra and onto Ucal. So this is the big kind of moment there. And again, I think Scout slotting very nicely in, very much showing that he is going to be able to link up with Tarzan just as good as Doomby did as well.
Tarzan's definitely my MVP for that game. He was so proactive
sure.
in that entire game, and just his engages into those team fights later on into game where he was able to get both carries of TT is just so insanely good. And of course, nothing more to expect from the original jungle from 2022 of LNG.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, for TT, it's disappointing because you look at this roster, you look at how they played last split, you look at what the building blocks they put in and how they were able to kind of move pieces around and go, okay, we bring in Huanfeng, see if he can do something there with Xinliu. It's just not quite working out. And again, it was little things. Ucal getting caught out, not quite able to get the AD carry and support going like you mentioned. And little by little, bit by bit, it just fell apart at the seams. And even smaller things, they got 3 dragons in a row. They should have had soul.
Yeah. They did have 3 dragons in their pockets, like you said, but they just weren't able to make it to that 4th dragon because of how much they allowed LNG to scale with this Ryze and Sivir, where these team fights became extremely hard to fight, especially with Huanfeng opting into the Gale Force and Rapid Fire for the first 2 items in his build. Not a lot of damage coming out of the ADC, who's supposedly the carry and the person that got the early gold.
Yeah, it didn't really kind of come out to it, but of course 84.6% kill participation there for Tarzan really was just the catalyst that brought it all together. I will say the Yuumi there as well did not die. Great for Hong as well. We love to see Hong. I want to see him on something like Thresh though. Get rid of the Yuumi. Ban it. I don't care. I don't care whose team on it. I don't care what you support. Just get rid of the Yuumi. I just hate seeing it because it just feels like such an anti-fun champion to come into this one here. But now you're on the back foot for TT. What do you see? You know what? Well, we'll send it to a quick break. And when we return, we'll talk about what you want to see from TT.